Council meeting for Thursday, April 20th, 2017 has now been called to order. We will have the invocation and pledge of allegiance by Mr. McMillan. Please stand.
Dear Heavenly Father, we want to thank you for the grace you pour out upon us daily. We ask a special blessing over this meeting tonight, over this nation, this state, and this parish. We ask a special blessing on all our active duty members and our veterans. And we just want you to watch over them and guide them, Lord. Thank you for all the good you do daily for us, Lord. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Can we have roll call, Madam Secretary?
Sir, Mr. Antoine?
Here.
Mr. Barris?
Here.
Vice President Brain?
Here.
Mr. Collins?
Here. Here.
Mr. Fulton?
Here.
Good. Mr. Guillory?
Here.
Mr. Hunter? Mr. Landry?
Here.
Mr. Latour?
Here.
Ms. Mayo?
Here.
Mr. McMillan?
Here.
Mr. Scott? Mrs. Trimmy? Here. Mr. White?
Here.
And President Guidry.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. At this time, we have a few housekeeping items. For those of you that have cell phones, any type of pager, we ask that you would put that device to silence. And if there's anybody that want to speak on any of the items on tonight's agenda, there are some blue slips in the rear of the room. Please fill those out and bring those either to the front to Mr. Dane or our legal counsel, Mr. Sam.
Mr. Guidry, if I could real quick, just say that Mr. Scott is at the hospital with his new grandbaby.
I do apologize for that, Mr. McMillan.
They're being born right at this moment, so that's why he's not here.
I do apologize for that, Mr. McMillan, yes. We definitely want to keep his family in prayers.
Absolutely. I apologize that Mr. McMillan doesn't know your name.
That kind of surprised me, Chris, to be honest with you. We'll get him later on, though.
Okay, I'm ready.
And with that, we'll move on to item number 4. Presentation by Cash and Carry Farmers Market on activities at Prien Lake Park in Lake Charles beginning April 27, 2017 and throughout the year.
There is, Mr. President, a representative from the farmers market who would like to cover that briefly.
Yes. We ask that you would state your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Jacob Manso. My address is 3600 Arvilla Lane here in Lake Charles, Louisiana. Really appreciate you guys having us here today to present a little history on the Cash and Carry. We started the Cash and Carry in 2010 with 3 vendors and about 20 customers. We now have a Rolodex of a little over 30 vendors. We see about 200 to 300 people every single week on Tuesday at the Cash and Carry. This expanding for us has been a project that we've been looking at for a long time. Bringing food to sort of the south end of the city for us is huge. We get a lot of people saying it's just really tough to fight the traffic and that kind of thing to get downtown. So this gives us the opportunity to provide nutritious food to a larger portion of our community on a more regular basis. And also, I think a lot of times people forget about farmers markets as we look at ourselves as a small business incubator, as well as providing nutrient-dense, locally sourced foods to people. We've had several people that have product in Whole Foods. We've got a few people with some brick and mortars now and food trucks. So this is just a great opportunity for our community to thrive, not only health-wise, but also from an economic stance. On the screens you see there, we basically proposed to set 20 spots here. You're looking at the south parking lot on the side of the boat launch there. So we'll set up just along the pathway to where people can step off of the pathway and not interrupt regular park activities, but also be able to service them and allow people to pass on by. So we definitely expect a large turnout, but our hope is that we can still let the park operate as normal, just allowing us to be a part of it as well, and that gives you the aerial view of exactly where we'll be. So some of the products we have, we've got local beef, honey, We've got lots of produce. One of the largest organic farm in Louisiana will be there, Englewood. They supply several Whole Foods from New Orleans, Lafayette area. We've got baked goods and sort of the normal fare, eggs. We'll have dairy. Pretty much just about everything you would need, from eggs, milk, bread, produce to sweets as well. Any questions?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Jacob, for that report. We do have a few jurors that would like to ask a few questions.
Sure.
Vice President, Mr. Brain.
Thank you, Mr. President. Jacob, when are you planning on doing this? When there's
So we're going to be
times?
April 27th is our first market. We're proposed to be there every second and fourth Thursday of the month. Our vendors will begin setting up at 2 o'clock. We will officially open at 3:30. So our hours of operation are 3:30 to 6:30, with our vendors being there an hour before and an hour after for setup and breakdown. We'll have weights on the tents. We will not be puncturing the grass or anything as far as stakes. We've got sandbags, 20 pounds each on each leg for every tent. We purchased brand new white tents, so they'll all be uniform. It should look really nice with the bridge and the water as the backdrop.
Okay, and you said the second and fourth, Thursday?
Thursday.
Thursday,
yes. We
okay.
currently operate on Tuesday, now we'll be on Thursdays as well.
Okay, all right, thank you, Jacob. Mr. Landry.
Mr. Landry.
Thank you, Mr. President. So will you continue on Tuesday on Broad Street?
We will. Tuesday on Broad Street will be our flagship location. This is sort of it's just an offshoot, mainly to, again, just to access a wider scope of our community, really, that we do see on Tuesdays, but this will give them the opportunity to pass us on the way home.
And will you have the same number of vendors? There'll be like 30 vendors there?
We've started with 20, and I think that was just a matter of keep it small scale enough to manage it, make sure it works well for you guys in the park, not to overload that walkway as well. We'll fit 20 very nicely on that path, and again, to be able to pull the customers off of that walkway.
And is it just produce? Is it food type items, or is there other?
There are
things
also,
there?
we call them value-added products, so that would be something like a banana nut bread or something like that. So we've got raw produce, raw proteins, as well as value-added baked goods and jams and jellies and that kind of thing.
Okay. There was a similar thing. I think, have you ever been to Sandestin? I think we talked about that. I believe that was the correct place there, down off of 30A, and there's a green area that they do that once or twice a week, and
Sure.
it's similar. It would really, it's pretty neat. I think you are going to do well there.
I agree.
Now, if someone would want to become a vendor, how do they get in touch with y'all? How would they go about?
They
doing it?
can reach us at our website, cashandcarryfarmersmarket.com, all lowercase, all one word. It says become a vendor there, and there's an application, there's rules and regulations. They can fill it out right there on site. They can also reach us via Facebook, and then also on site. We keep applications on site as well.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Landry. Mr. Guillory.
Mr. Landry asked the same question. Thank you, Principal.
All right. Mr. White.
It's more just a statement. I can appreciate y'all wanting to expand to this location. If the public hasn't gone to Cash and Carry to visit the farmers market there, we're, as a family, frequent visitors to the every Tuesday that we can make it. It's a great deal to get fresh foods, local foods. It's a great opportunity for families to go and just enjoy the atmosphere, for one. The bands that y'all have, it's really a great thing that y'all are putting on, and I appreciate you wanting to expand to something else.
Thank you, Mr. White.
You'll back.
Mr. White. Mr. Forner.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll preface this with saying I'm not opposed to what's going on here. My worry is, and I'll address this to Brian, what happens when the watermelon guy and the shrimp guy and all those guys want to go set up a little booth there to sell their stuff? How do we handle that?
That's a good question. And Dean Kelly can probably get more detail. He and his staff, as well as Alberto Galan and on my staff, have worked hard on a lot of those so that it's obviously with a public park. I'm glad he mentioned that. You don't want to have it become it's not for private commercial. It's one of the main benefits, Les, is the tie-in with promoting healthy eating. As you know, y'all are a part of the Healthy Partnership, and this is one way to do it. But we want to make sure it's got some parameters to where it's not closed to certain vendors. And some of those details we have to work through. I'd rather have Dean kind of comment on that in more detail. Alberto can speak to that issue more specifically.
Alberto, name and position with the parish, please.
Alberto Galan, Administrative Analyst. In terms of those safeguards, we will have a CEA between us and Cash and Carry Farmers Market, which will outline some of those requirements that we have to have, as well as insurance. We'll also have to have those vendor applications in our file here at the parish. So in addition to them filing the application with Cash and Carry, we'll also have that application on file at the parish to make sure that everything's being handled properly. And Dean and Lacey have done a good job in terms of reviewing the way other areas do it. We've also gotten information from them on how they operate. And so those safeguards are in place to where you can't just show up and set up and start selling. We have a CEA with Cash and Carry that we've worked out, and we'll have executed prior to that first market, and then we'll also have those vendor applications on our file, and that'll be an extra step to make sure that people are legitimate and follow the rules and regulations of the Cash and Carry.
Thank you. I guess the biggest concern is that we don't have a floodgate open here. When somebody sees them set up there, and it's like, well, you're letting them, why aren't you letting us? As long as we got a fair and equitable way of vetting these different vendors, and it could expand to every one of our parks in the whole parish. So as long as we got a system in place
Yes.
that
That's a good question.
meets the muster, and we've got a way to vet these guys. So thank y'all for y'all's work in getting this set up.
Mr. Barris.
Thank you, Mr. President. You covered my question, Alberto, as far as one of my concerns was insurance. Nothing's going to be cooked. It's all just strictly distributed. I mean, just.
So nothing will be cooked on site.
Okay, okay.
There will be items that have been cooked, but
Right,
nothing
but
will be cooked on
No
site.
power, no fire, just strictly.
There may
fruit
be
stand.
a minuscule amount of need for power as far as to run a freezer for the meat guy or something like that, but they've got extremely low decibel generators that'll be off in the back that I've already addressed with them, that if we hear it, it's got to go, so.
Okay, thank you.
Not a problem.
Are you back?
Mr. McMillan.
Thank you, I'm all for this. I've been by the one at the Cash and Carry on Tuesday sometimes, but I think some of my constituents ask, where's the money going? Are you charging the vendors for a space? Those would be the type of questions I may get. Could you address that for me?
Yeah, absolutely. So we are an LLC. We are in the process of forming the nonprofit or not-for-profit. So as of now, we are charging our vendors to pay for the investment for the tents, to pay for the management. I've got to have somebody there to set the tents up, make sure that all the rules and regulations are being followed. They also handle all of its paying for marketing. We've got signs being made that match the parish signs, the tobacco-free zone signs you've seen. So for the first 2 years, we intend the money will go back to the Cash and Carry to recoup our investment, and after that, any vendor who's been there for 2 years or more will basically reduce down to just pay for the management side of things on a weekly basis. So we approach this more as a co-op. When this idea was proposed to the vendors, it was, here's the initial investment, here's the timeline, here's what it takes for us to recoup that investment, and after that, you're no longer responsible.
Thank you, and good luck.
Thank you.
Any other questions by the jury? Jacob, we thank you for your report, man, and we look forward to much success.
Thank you guys very, very much.
Thank you so much for coming out this evening. Item number 5 is a 6 o'clock action. We're going to go ahead and move past item number 5. My vice president will alert me when that time is near. I will now move on to item number 6. Take appropriate actions on applications for liquor and beer permits. Mr. Crane.
Mr. President, we have one application before you tonight. Recommend it be approved.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. McMillan and a second by Mr. Collins. Any discussion? Any objection? Motion carried. Item number 7, consideration of approving payments of all current invoices. I have a motion by Mr. Andrew Point and a second by Mr. Barris. Any discussion? Any objection? Motion carry. Item number 8, consideration approving the
Move on,
minutes of the
8.
regular meeting of the police jury dated
Second.
March 23rd, 2017. I have a motion by Mr. Landry and a second,
Mr. White.
Mr. White. Mr. White, you're in that corner right there. I keep missing you. Any
Forget it,
discussion?
forget
Any objection? Motion carry. Item number 9, consideration of
9.
ratifying a local government proclamation of the state of emergency signed by President Guidry on April 8th, 2017, on behalf of the police jury as a result of flooding on roadways and waterways in portions of the parish of Calcasieu. I have a motion by Mr. Collins and a second by Ms. Mayo. Any discussion? Any objection? Motion carry.
Move on 10.
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Trimmy. Consideration of adopting a resolution approving the call of a special bond and tax election by the Board of Commissioners of Fire Protection District Number 1 of Ward 6 to be held on November 18, 2017, for the authorization to levy and collect a 3 mil ad valorem tax for the purpose of acquiring constructing improvements, maintaining and operating fire protection facilities, machinery, and equipment to be used in giving fire protection to the properties within and for the district. I have a motion by Ms. Trimmy and a second by Mr. White. Any discussion?
And Cal seconded.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. McMillan.
I'm sorry, Mr. McMillan. I hate that I miss you. Any discussion? Any objection? Motion carry. Item number 11, take appropriate action on a request by James
Move on,
Moore to
11.
rezone from
Second.
agricultural to manufactured home park, to allow a manufactured home park, 3 spaces at 298 Bergstrom Road in Ward 4. Planning and Zoning Board met on April 18, 2017, and voted unanimously to recommend that the request be granted with stipulations. Move to uphold planning and zoning. I have a motion by Mr. Barris and a second by Mr. Forner. Any discussion? Any objection? Motion carry. Item number 12, take appropriate action on the
Move on
request by
12.
William
Second.
McCain to rezone from mixed residential to light commercial, to allow light commercial development, fix-it shop in the
To
900
uphold
block
planning and
of
zoning.
Park Road in Ward 1. The Planning and Zoning Board met on April 18, 2017, and voted unanimously to recommend that the request be granted with stipulations. I have a motion by Mr. White to uphold planning and zoning, and a second by Mr. Calvin. We do have discussion. Mr. Landry.
Isn't this the same man that came here about a month or so ago?
No,
Sir.
sir, this is,
Whoever.
Fix-it shop? Yes, sir.
I
No.
think he turned in a card.
Yeah, I have it.
I mean, is this the same applicant?
Is this the guy?
Yes, sir.
Jones?
We just, what did we do a month or so ago? I
Deferred.
forgot. I slept since then. I don't
Deferred.
remember. Did we defer it, or what happened?
No, it's rejected.
It was rejected.
Yes.
So how can the same thing come back up and it hadn't been
It's
12
on, it's a
months?
different piece of property.
Different piece of
That's
property,
it.
okay.
Okay.
Same applicant, different piece of property.
correct.
Yes.
Okay.
He's here to,
It must have worked this time.
We do have an
It did.
applicant. Mr. John, would you please come forward? State your name and address for the record, please, and you may proceed.
John Gilmore, 605 Hardwood Drive in Moss Bluff. Y'all have any questions?
Go ahead.
I'm just here to, if you have any questions.
We do. Mr. White.
Just to clarify what Chris is asking, the piece of property that he initially came here to get rezoned was in front of the school. This has now moved closer to the 4-way stop sign that is within commercial property. Correct, Mr. Crane?
Well, he's having to rezone the property, but there, on the opposite corner of his is a convenience store. So it's actually in a better location.
But wasn't it not on the same street? Park Road?
It was,
So it's still on the same street?
yes.
Okay.
Very observant.
I'm
Mr. Landry.
sorry, but I mean, that just, I don't think I had a problem with it last month. Best I remember. I forgot. But I'm good. It was
Thank you, Mr.
unanimous.
Landry. Yes. John, anything else?
No, just if
We're
y'all have any
good.
questions.
I had a motion by Mr. White to uphold planning and zoning, and a second by Mr. Collins. Any other discussion? Any objection? Motion carry. Moving on to item number 13, take appropriate actions on a request by Alan Seal to rezone from manufactured home park to recreational vehicle park, to allow a recreational vehicle park, 6 spaces for recreational vehicles and 5 spaces for manufactured homes at 3330 Westwood Road in Ward 4. The Planning and Zoning Board met on April 18th, 2017, and voted unanimously to recommend that the request be granted with stipulations.
I'm going to make a motion to uphold zoning and planning, but I'm going to add one more stipulation. And it's at the request, I've already visited with the owner. The east side of the property, that neighbor would like an 8-foot wooden fence, and the owner is in agreement with that. So I'm going to add that stipulation to that, but my motion is to accept it and a
Second.
stipulation of adding an 8-foot wooden fence on the east side of the property.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Dog ears.
Mr. Giller, is that okay with you because you made the motion?
I made the second.
Hal
I made
made-
the second.
Second?
Hal made the
Okay.
motion. Hal made the motion.
All right, Mr. McMillan. We'll accept that stipulation that was made by Mr. McMillan, and to uphold planning and zoning. I have a discussion by Mr. Landry.
What kind of wood is it gonna be, and do you want it dog-eared or not?
Y'all need-
That's the question.
I mean, you
Just an
need,
8-foot
knew
wooden
you were
fence.
gonna ask.
It's all,
I
the
think-
actual petitioner's going to get
You want to put
with the
that
near
in?
neighbor, and they're going to work that out. But
Stipulation,
it's
Mr.
going to be an
McMillan.
8-foot wooden fence.
bamboo, pine,
Wood, cedar.
dog-eared,
Cedar fence.
cedar.
Yeah.
Cedar, dog-eared, or no dog-eared?
Point of order,
Not sure,
Mr.
though.
President.
All right,
Do we have
leave
to
that.
have
Yes,
two
Steve.
motions?
Just
Yes.
wanted to make sure.
We had a motion by Mr. McMillan.
I know, but we need another motion.
Oh, there was another motion. Legal counsel.
The first motion was sufficient. It was.
Yes.
It was fine. The way the
Covered
motion was
with the
made, it was
stipulation.
Yes,
fine.
yes. Thank you.
Be sure.
Gap. Any other discussion? Any objection? Motion carried. Item number 14, take appropriate action on a request by Jerry Gibson and wife to rezone from manufactured home park to recreational vehicle park, to allow a recreational vehicle park at 5106 Highway 27 South in Ward 4. The Planning and Zoning Board met on April 18, 2017, and voted unanimously to recommend that the request be granted with stipulations.
Move to uphold planning and zoning on 14.
Second.
Had a motion by Mr. Barris to uphold planning and zoning, and a second by Mr. Landry. Any discussion? Any objection? Motion carried. Item number 15, take appropriate action on a request by Sasol Chemicals USA LLC to abandon and revoke the original dedication of BCM Plant Road, Michigan Avenue, Electric Drive, First Avenue, Third Avenue, Fourth Avenue, Fifth Avenue, Sixth Avenue, and Seventh Avenue.
Move to
The
uphold this
Planning and
dedication
Zoning
of
Board
roads.
met on April 18, 2017, and
Abandonment
voted
of roads.
unanimously to recommend that the request be granted with stipulations. I have a motion by Mr. McMillan to uphold planning and zoning, and a second by Mr. Latour.
Got some discussion.
Yes, and Mr. Farnham, Madam Secretary, Mr. Farnham needs to recuse himself from this item.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Farnham.
You got Barris and Anderpont down there.
I do have discussion. Mr. Andrew Point?
Oh, I just made a second.
Okay.
I agree with Hal, it needs to be
Okay.
done.
Okay.
Catch me up on,
Ferris?
are we closing all of these roads? Like the VCM plant road, that's not the road that goes between,
That is the request, is to abandon the roads. I think it's on your tablet. The remaining roads off of VCM Plant Road as well as VCM Plant Road.
that sounds like a heavy lift. I mean, is that, everybody's good with that in your,
Yeah, if I could, Mr. Barris, on all those roads are either property owned by Sasol, both sides of the road. On VCM Plant Road, it's Westlake Chemical and Sasol. There's no residents. and they have petitioned us, and both the industries are asking us to close it on their.
Close that road, okay.
So I'm good with that.
Okay. Can I have the Electric Avenue sign?
More than welcome, we'll make
you
sure
know you
that.
wanted that.
We definitely will check on that. Thank you, Mr. Barris. Mr. Landry.
We will invoice you for it, Mr. Gabb. and, yeah, with Mr. Connor, I'm sure there'll be a way that you could write a check and pay the invoice, and we'll sell it to you.
I've always wanted it.
He's always wanted.
It's not Electric Avenue either.
We don't always get what we want.
Yeah.
Mr. McMillan, did you want to add anything else to that?
Good, Mr.
We had a motion and a second. Any discussion, any objection? Motion carry. We're going to go ahead and take on item number 16. Consider. Okay, my vice president say I need to move back to my 6 o'clock action. I'm going to take
Got
word
5
of my.
minutes.
Not 6 o'clock.
That clock is not right, but that's what you gotta go by.
I'm going off what my vice president tells me.
go, 6 o'clock.
We're going 6 o'clock.
We started by that clock.
That's right. You gotta go
If
for
you'd
it.
like to wait for that, that's fine,
I'll-
Mr. President.
I wanted you to know I was with you, Vice. Okay, we'll move back to item number 16. Item number 16, consideration of adopting a resolution approving an amendment to the pipeline reimbursement agreement between the Police Jury and Shell Pipeline Company LP to extend the pipeline protective coating 240 feet or Calcasieu Parish number
Move to adopt.
2014-08 in Ward 3. I have a motion by Mr. Graham and a second by Mr. Landry. Any discussion? Any objection? Motion carry. We're going to go ahead and take on 17.
Move
Consider-
on 17 in all bullets.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Consideration of adopting a resolution for the following items as requested by the Office of Juvenile Justice. Item A, approving the submittal of a continuum application to the Louisiana Supreme Court for the Families in Need Service Assistance Program. Item B, approving an agreement for participating in the Title IV-E Federal Foster Care Reimbursement Program. Item C, approving the submittal of a continuum grant application to the Louisiana Commission of Law Enforcement for a case manager counseling service to assist victims of child abuse. We had a motion by Ms. Trimmy on all bullets and a second by Mr. Landry. Any discussion? Any objection? Motion carry. See if we can get number 18. Can we get 18, Vice President? Moving on to item number 18, consideration of adopting a resolution for the following items.
Move on 18,
as
all
requested
bullets.
by the Human Service Development Department. A, Mr. Matthew Innings.
Move to appoint Mr.
Appoint- To appoint Mr. Landry T.
Appoint Mr.
Doucette.
Landry Doucette.
Dakota.
Landry Doucette. No, Ducote. I'm sorry, Ducote.
That's okay, we both.
Sorry, I
said the
I
same
didn't put
thing.
my glasses on.
Me neither.
I apologize.
All right. Item B, Ms. Michelle Nicholson.
Got a motion and a second.
I had a motion, I have a motion by Mr. Collins and a second by Mr. Latour. I have a motion by Mr. Latour and a second by Mr. Collins on item A. Item B, Ms. Michelle,
Discussion?
we have discussion?
Any objection?
Any objection?
Hearing none.
I'm trying to get back to beat the clock.
Gotta do them all.
Item B, Ms. Michelle
I'd like to move
Nicholson.
to appoint Mr. Tad
Second.
Fitchum.
Mr. Latour moved to appoint Mr. Fincham, and it was second by Ms. Mayo. Any discussion? Any objection? Item B passes. Item C, Mr.
I'd like to
Joseph
move to
Duhon.
Appoint Mr. Lonnie Harper.
Second.
Ms. Latour moved to appoint Mr. Harper. It was seconded by Ms. Mayo. Any discussion? Any objection? C passes. Item D, Ms.
To move to
Ginger.
appoint Ms. Hope
Gun-
Ludum Prather. Second. Ludum.
I had a motion by Mr. Latour to appoint Ms. Prather and a second by Mr. Barris. Any discussion?
Yes.
We do have discussion. Mr. Guillory.
Just asking, were the time up limit or I see everybody, new appointments, were they time up or anything, or just giving up their spot, or what?
I really couldn't answer that, sir. You could better answer that?
Deputy Mr.
Filled the unexpired term.
Resignation.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, unexpired because of a resignation.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Guillory. We had a motion and a second. Any discussion? Any objection? Item number 18
Says it right there.
carries. My vice president said we're going to our 6 o'clock action.
Town Road.
We got 3.
All right. Number 5, hold a public hearing at 6 p.m. as a result of a notice provided to the owners of the properties described below in accordance with Article 2 of Chapter 6 of the Code of Ordinance of Parish of Calcasieu, Louisiana, ordering said owners to show cause as to why structures on said properties should not be condemned. Mr. Roberts.
Good evening, everybody. Our first structure on the agenda tonight is 134 Charlie Stanley Loop. This is in the Starks area. There's one house. The owner is Sam Ardoin Jr. We recommend this structure be condemned and removed in 30 days.
So moved.
Wow.
I have a motion by Ms. Trimmy and a second by Mr. Landry. Any discussion? Any objection? Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak on this item?
They gotta put their card in.
Seeing none. Item B carries. Item A carries. Go ahead, Mr. Roberts.
Okay.
Item B.
Item B is 6928 McCowan Road. This is in the East Lake Charles area. We have one manufactured home and an accessory building. The owner is James Ferris. We recommend these structures be condemned and removed in 30 days.
So move.
I have a motion by Mr. Guillory
Second.
and a second by Mr. Collins. Any discussion? Any objection? Is there anyone here in the audience that would like to speak on this item? Seeing none? Motion carry. Item C, Mr.
This is 4039 Ellis Street. This is in the East Lake Charles area also. It's two manufactured homes. The owner is a Richard Paul Jasmine. We recommend both of these structures be condemned and removed in 30 days.
So move.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Collins and a second by Mr. Landry. Is there any discussion? Any objection? Is there anyone here in the audience that would like to speak on this item? Seeing none? Item C carries. Going back to item 19.
Move on 19.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Andrew Point.
You're most welcome.
Item-
20 and 21.
Item 19. Take appropriate actions on bids received by the parish purchasing agent on April 11, 2017 for 3 cargo vans for the use by the Division of Facilities Management. I had a motion by Mr. Andrew Point and a second by Mr. Barris. Any discussion? We do have discussion. Mr. Landry.
I don't understand why it doesn't say who bid on it and who the low bidder is.
Cargo vans is
Is
the
it
contract.
attached?
They doing state contract or what? I don't know. It just says take action on it.
You have,
On the attachment?
it's not there.
Normally, it's just listed right under it, and I don't
Go ahead, Mr. Bolton.
mean to-
Mr. Landry, on the attachment, it says that the
Memo.
3 2017 newer cargo vans valued at $118,539, and recommended that
Bolton
bid be
Ford.
accepted, both and Ford.
Bolton
It
Ford.
was one bidder.
That's all I wanted to know.
It's an attachment.
Usually it's here. That's fine.
State contract.
I'm good. I think
you,
you've
Mr. Landry.
got a motion.
Go ahead, Mr. McMillan.
I said it's usually on a state contract, right?
Could be.
Could be, I don't know for sure on this, maybe Tammy knows, but I think this one may be, but I could find out for you, Mr. McMillan.
No big deal. Okay, thank you, Mr. Landry.
Thank you, Mr.
I'm sure
McMillan.
she bought it as cheap as she could get it. I can promise you that.
I had a motion by Mr. Andrew Point and a second by Mr. Barris. Any other discussion?
It says-
Any objection? Item 19 carried.
Whatever that's.
Item number 20.
I'll move on 20.
Consideration of authorizing the parish purchase agent to advertise for requests for qualifications for professional engineering services for the Calcasieu Parish Transportation Initiative Program. I have a motion by Mr. Andrew Point and a second by Mr. Barris. Any discussion? Any objection? At this time, before we adjourn, I would like to call on Mr. Brian Bean.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is just an informational item that came up very recently. As some of you know, the Houston River Fire Station has experienced some flooding again with the recent rains, and there's not time to prepare it adequately. I'm sorry, it's also a polling place for the election on April 29th. And there's concern it won't be able to be prepared for that. So there are a couple of tax renewal elections in Ward 7 that has this polling place serves a small part of that ward. So the polling place will be located temporarily for that election to R.W. Vincent Elementary School to accommodate voters. So, and there's procedures to notify through different channels. So just an FYI, in case some of you didn't see that, that happened recently. And it's just going to be temporary, just for this election. And I think also separately, Mr. President, you had wanted an item for, just to bring up a condolences item.
Yes, I'm going to go to
I'm
Mr.
finished.
Francis for a point of first appearance. Thank you, Mr. Bean.
I just want to bring something up. You know, we go item by item here. You know, years ago when Alan August was here, that's not the way it was. Move on 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Get a second and we'd move on. Finally, one night, somebody said, well, the general public out there don't know what we're voting on, so that's the night that we decided that every item had to be taken. But I'm serious, Sandy, you remember that. Move on 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. You know, that second, and move right along. Sandy.
Wow.
He was ready to go to the basement.
Ready. He was ready, Ted. Oh, my goodness. Oh, Lord. All right.
Move to adjourn.
Just a minute. I would like to add a resolution of condolences for a lot of you that know the gentleman, Mr. Daniel Ayub, who was a very good friend, was my high school principal, and later went on to just be a mentor to me. We all know that he passed away, and such a great family, and such just a great group of people. And I just want to say, let's keep the family in prayer, because I had a chance to go to the hospital and see him, and, you know, I saw him 2 days prior to the accident. And I just want to say, you never know what tomorrow holds, and I would just like to ask that we all just be mindful of how we treat one another and the things that we say and do sometimes, because you never know. You can never go back and take it back, because you don't know. And he was such a great guy, and he's going to be missed. And I just want to say he was a big part of who I am today, to be honest with you. And I could say so much, but let's just keep the family in prayer. And I think services are going to be Sunday evening, and I want to say it's going to be at Johnson Funeral Home, and I think it's going to be, the funeral will be at the Cathedral, 10 a.m. Monday. So just keep the family in prayer. And I just want to thank all of you for giving me this time just to share that with you.
Move
And
to
at this
accept.
time, I would ask for,
Move to accept the recommendation.
thank you, Mr. Brennan. And I have a second by Mr. Barris. Thank you all. And is there any discussion? Any objection?
Move to adjourn.
Mr. Francis asks for a motion to adjourn. At this time, we will adjourn. We have a second and a motion. So we're now adjourned.